Welcome to another English podcast provided by LingExam Language Academy. The name of this deep dive is IELTS Academic versus TOEFL iBT, a complete guide for university applicants, and it's proudly provided by LingExam.com. Look, for so many of you thinking about studying abroad, choosing between IELTS Academic and TOEFL iBT, well, it feels like a really huge first step, doesn't it?
It really does.
Both are, globally recognized, super important, and honestly pretty crucial for your academic future. Our mission today is basically to be your guides, help you navigate the key bits of these two major English tests. So whether you're looking at the UK, the US, Canada, Australia, or maybe somewhere in Europe, understanding how they're different, that's going to help you make the best call for your studies. And hey, remember, for tons more useful stuff and prep materials, you should always check out LingExam.com.
That's absolutely right. And while both tests can definitely get you where you want to go internationally, they really do have sort of distinct personalities, you could say. And different places prefer one over the other sometimes. It's like choosing the right tool for the job, almost. Understanding the small differences is key.
That's a great analogy. Okay, so let's jump right into that global picture then. They're both accepted pretty much everywhere, but like you said, there are leanings, right? Where are they most commonly needed?
Okay, so let's start with IELTS Academic. You're looking at acceptance by over 11,000 institutions in more than 140 countries. It's especially big in the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and right across Europe. And actually, a really important point for anyone aiming for the UK. IELTS is often a specific requirement for the student visa. That alone can kind of make the decision for you sometimes.
Right, so a definite edge there for the UK and Commonwealth countries, it sounds like. What about TOEFL iBT then? How does that stack up, particularly thinking about North America?
Well, TOEFL iBT, that's the internet-based test. It absolutely holds its own. We're talking over 11,500 institutions in 160-plus countries. It's definitely the preferred choice for many universities in the U.S. and Canada. That's its sort of home turf. Now, it is also recognized in places like the UK and Australia, but it's always smart to double-check the specific university or visa rules there. Sometimes they might lean towards IELTS.
Okay, so for someone listening right now trying to figure this out, what's the sort of immediate practical takeaway from all that acceptance info? How does it help narrow things down?
Yeah, the first practical step for you is basically this. If you know for sure you're aiming for a university in the US or Canada, TOEFL is often preferred, maybe slightly simpler for your application. But if your goal is the UK, Australia, or somewhere in Europe, IELTS tends to be more common, though, again, TOEFL is usually accepted too, so you still have options. But that geographical focus, that's really your first filter,
Yeah.
That points you in a general direction.
Makes total sense. Know your destination first. Okay, now let's get into the nitty-gritty, how these tests are actually built. Understanding the structure, the format, that can really calm some nerves on exam day, I think. Can you walk us through how they compare side by side?
Sure thing. Let's start with IELTS Academic. It's got 4 parts. Listening, that's about 30 minutes. Then reading, that's an hour, 60 minutes. Writing, also 60 minutes. And finally, speaking, which is shorter, usually around 11 to 14 minutes. Now, listening, reading, and writing, they're always done together, back to back, in one session. Takes about 2 hours and 40 minutes altogether. The speaking test is kind of unique because it's a live, face-to-face interview with an examiner, and that might be on the same day, or sometimes up to a week before or after the other parts. Format-wise, you can choose paper or computer, though honestly, most places use the computer-delivered version now.
A live chat for speaking. That's definitely a big difference. How's the TOEFL iBT structure look, especially now they've updated it?
Right. The TOEFL iBT, the newer version from 2024 onwards, also has 4 sections, but the timing's a bit different, and it's all digital. No paper option. You've got reading, about 35 minutes. Listening, around 36 minutes. Speaking, roughly 16 minutes. And writing, that's about 29 minutes. The whole thing's done on the same day. Reading, listening, you get a 10-minute break, then speaking, then writing. All computer-based. You can take it at a test center, or in many places you can actually do it from home, which is a big plus for some. And for the speaking part, you record your answers using a microphone on the computer. Those recordings are then graded by a mix of AI and human scorers. So yeah, talking to a screen, not a person.
Interesting. So beyond just the timings and sections, how do they actually test your academic English? Are they kind of looking for the same abilities, or do they approach it differently? What skills are really being measured?
That's a really key point. The way they test skills definitely influences how you should prepare. IELTS Academic, it tends to focus on real-world academic situations, but also integrates contexts outside pure academics sometimes. So the listening and reading might cover various topics and crucially use different accents, British, Australian, American, you name it. It prepares you for that linguistic mix you'd find on an international campus. The writing part is also quite specific. Task 1 asks you to describe some kind of visual information, maybe a graph, chart, or diagram, testing your ability to, interpret data and report it accurately. Then task 2 is a more standard academic essay where you argue a point of view on a given topic.
Okay, and TOEFL. How does its academic focus shape up? I've heard it's maybe more centered on the U.S. university experience.
That's generally true, yeah. TOEFL iBT really leans into the American academic setting. The reading passages, the listening lectures, they often simulate what you'd encounter in a U.S. university campus life, classroom discussions, things like that. A big thing with TOEFL is what they call integrated skills tasks. This is really important. In both speaking and writing, you'll often have to say, read a short text, then listen to a related lecture or conversation, and then speak or write your response, combining info from both sources. It's designed to mimic how you actually use English in university, listening to a professor, reading an article, then discussing it or writing about it. So this raises a really important question for you, the listener. Which style suits you better? Describing charts and writing a standalone essay like in IELTS? Or are you better at pulling information together from different places, like in TOEFL?
That's a critical difference to consider how you naturally process information, which leads straight to the next big question everyone asks. Which one's harder? But it sounds like there's no simple answer, right? It really depends on the individual.
Exactly. There's no single harder test. It honestly comes down to your personal comfort zone with different types of questions and the test format itself. Let's look at it section by section. For reading, IELTS gives you 3 pretty long academic passages. The vocabulary can be challenging, but sometimes the questions are more straightforward, finding specific details, maybe. TOEFL, especially the newer, shorter version, has 2 passages. It uses a lot of multiple choice questions, but they often require you to make inferences, understand the author's stance, synthesize ideas across the text, less about just finding the fact, more about understanding the meaning.
And listening. You mentioned the accents in IELTS.
Yeah, that's a factor. IELTS listening includes 4 sections, mixing academic lectures with everyday conversations, and deliberately uses various accents, so you need that broader listening skill. TOEFL listening has about 5 recordings, mostly lectures or academic chats, and nearly always in standard American English. So if you're very used to American accents, TOEFL might feel a bit more predictable in that sense.
Speaking is where that format difference really kicks in, live person versus computer. How does that affect how hard it feels?
It's a big psychological difference for many. IELTS speaking is that 14-minute chat with an examiner. Some people find this more natural, less pressure maybe, allows for more back and forth. But for others, that face-to-face pressure can be quite intimidating. TOEFL speaking involves recording your answers to 4 different prompts into the computer. It feels less personal, which can actually reduce anxiety for some test takers. You're just responding to the task, not reacting to a person's expression.
Right. Different strokes for different folks. And writing. How do those task differences translate into perceived difficulty?
Well, IELTS writing gives you 60 minutes total for 2 distinct tasks, describing that visual in Task 1 and the essay in Task 2. It emphasizes clear structure and academic style. TOEFL writing tasks, as we said, are often integrated, summarizing or responding to reading and listening inputs. And Task 2 is now more like writing an academic discussion post. The total time is shorter, about 29 minutes, so it requires quick thinking and concise summarizing skills, perhaps.
And the overall test length, that's got to be a factor for concentration.
Definitely. IELTS, for the main written parts, is about 2 hours, 45 minutes, plus that separate speaking test whenever it's scheduled. TOEFL, since the 2023 changes, is noticeably shorter, around 2 hours total, including the break. For some people, just knowing it's quicker can make it feel, well, less daunting.
Okay, so you've battled through the test. How do they actually score you? Understanding this is vital for setting realistic target scores.
Absolutely crucial. For IELTS, each skill, listening, reading, writing, speaking, gets its own score on a scale from 0 to 9. They use half bands too, like 6.5 or 7.5, so it's quite granular. Your final overall score is just the average of those 4 individual band scores. Most universities look for an overall score somewhere between, say, 6.0 and 7.5. But, and this is really important, they often have minimum scores for each section too. You might need a 7.0 overall, but also at least a 6.5 in writing, for example.
Gotcha. And TOEFL. Different system entirely.
Yep, different scale. TOEFL scores each of the 4 skills from 0 to 30 points. These scores are then just added together for a total score out of 120. So you might see university requirements like minimum 90 overall with at least 20 in each section.
Mhm.
The absolute key advice here, and we can't stress this enough, always, always check the specific website of the university and program you're applying to. Don't guess. Requirements vary a lot. Missing a section minimum is a common reason people don't meet the requirement, even with a good overall score.
Solid advice. Okay, let's think beyond the questions themselves. What's the actual test day like? And things like cost, finding a test center, getting your results back, these practical things matter too.
They really do. Test day comfort can make a difference. With IELTS, you have that choice, potentially, between paper or computer, which some people value. And the live speaking test feels more human, maybe less sterile for some. IELTS often has more test centers available globally, too, especially if you're not in a major city. TOEFL is 100% computer-based. The big advantage for some is the TOEFL iBT Home Edition, letting you test from home, assuming it's available and allowed in your region. That offers huge convenience. But yeah, all answers typed or recorded into the machine.
That home edition is definitely a game changer for accessibility. What about finding a test date and the cost involved?
Availability-wise, IELTS sometimes edges out TOEFL in terms of local sender frequency, just due to its historical reach, perhaps. Cost. They're usually pretty similar, generally falling somewhere in the $200 to $300 range. It's a significant chunk of money either way, so you want to choose the right test for you first time, if possible. Results turnaround. Computer IELTS is fast, usually 3 to 5 days. Paper IELTS takes longer, maybe 13 days. TOEFL results tend to come back in about 4 to 8 days. And retakes. Both let you retake fairly often. TOEFL has a rule about waiting at least 3 days between attempts. IELTS doesn't have that specific waiting period.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. We come back to that big question, which one is actually easier? And it really sounds like the answer is absolutely nailed it. There is no universally easier exam. It's all about matching the test to your skills and how you like to work. So maybe choose IELTS if you feel stronger with British English, if you prefer talking to a person in the speaking test, or if the idea of a paper test appeals to you, assuming it's still offered near you.
And conversely, when might TOEFL be the better fit? Well, you probably lean towards TOEFL if you're really comfortable working on a computer, if you're more attuned to American English, or if you generally find multiple choice questions more manageable than, say, filling in blanks or writing summaries from scratch. And, it's worth mentioning some students actually take both exams. It costs more, obviously, but it gives them maximum flexibility when applying to different universities around the world. Covers all bases.
Interesting strategy. Now, regardless of the choice, solid preparation is non-negotiable. What are the go-to resources listeners should be looking for?
Absolutely. For IELTS, you definitely want to look at the official Cambridge practice test books. They're gold standard. Also, resources from the British Council and IDP Education, the co-owners of IELTS, are excellent. Lots of online mock tests, too. For TOEFL, the best place to start is the official material from ETS, the company that makes the test. Their official guide and practice tests are essential. Publishers like Cambridge, Kaplan, and Barron's also have very good prep books. And here's a really practical tip. Before you dive deep into studying for one, try out some free sample questions from both IELTS and TOEFL websites. Just get a feel for the question types. See which one clicks better for you. It can save you a lot of time and effort down the line.
Great advice. Now, understanding the scoring criteria, the rubric, it can seem a bit academic itself, but knowing how they grade you is key to targeting your preparation, right? Can you simplify how the scores work and give some killer tips?
Yeah, demystifying the rubric is super helpful. For IELTS listening and reading, it's pretty straightforward. You get points for correct answers, and that raw score converts to your band score. For writing and speaking, they use specific criteria. IELTS writing looks at task achievement, did you answer fully? Coherence and cohesion, does it flow logically? Lexical resource, your vocabulary, and grammatical range and accuracy. Task 2, essay, counts for more, by the way. Speaking is judged on fluency and coherence, lexical resource again, grammar, and pronunciation.
Okay, and TOEFL. Similar ideas, but maybe different terms. And that AI scoring.
Pretty similar concepts, yeah. TOEFL reading and listening scores are scaled to that 0-30 range. Speaking focuses on delivery, clarity, pace, language use, grammar, vocab, and topic development, how well you answer and support your points. These are rated and then scaled to 30. TOEFL writing is assessed on things like how well you organize your response, develop ideas, use language accurately and appropriately, and importantly, how well you synthesize the information if it's an integrated task. And yes, they use a mix of AI technology and human raters to score the writing, aiming for consistency and objectivity.
So knowing all that, what are your absolute top practical tips for listeners aiming high on either test?
Okay, top tips. 1. Get hold of the official scoring rubrics. Understand exactly what they want for each score level. Look at official sample answers too. 2. Practice under timed conditions. This is crucial for writing and speaking. Record yourself speaking and listen back. It's painful but effective. 3. For reading and listening, focus on accuracy. Understand why you got answers wrong. Practice different question types. And 4, if possible, get feedback on your writing and speaking from someone who knows the test, a good teacher or tutor. That personalized advice can make a huge difference.
Fantastic advice. So wrapping this up, what's the main takeaway for everyone listening? Both IELTS Academic and TOEFL iBT are clearly strong, respected options for university entry.
Absolutely. Your final choice really needs to be driven by a few things: your specific academic ambitions, your own strengths and weaknesses in English, and crucially, what the universities you're applying to actually require. Always, always check their websites first. That's job number 1.
Couldn't agree more. And once you've picked your test, commit to preparing well. Use those official resources, practice consistently, track your progress, and for really targeted help, especially with writing, you might want to check out something like the IELTS Academic Writing Task 2 Vocabulary, Band 6 to 7 course, available on LingExam.com. It's designed to boost those specific skills. Definitely visit LingExam.com to learn more and see how you can lift your potential.
And maybe one final thought to leave you with: getting a good score is important, yes. But think bigger picture. Passing these tests is really about demonstrating you're ready to dive into academic life in English, to really engage with the material and discussions. So ask yourself, which test format, which style of assessment will best let your particular communication strengths shine through? Which one feels like a better platform for you to show what you can do?
That's a really powerful way to frame it. We definitely encourage you again to visit LingExam.com, explore the resources, study more on this topic, and prepare for your exam journey. Thank you so much for tuning into this deep dive. We truly hope this guide helps you feel more confident as you move forward. This has been IELTS Academic versus TOEFL iBT, a complete guide for university applicants, provided by LingExam.com.